How you guys doing? So my recording for this workshop got corrupted and basically now I have to do it again. So bear with me. Now, today we're going over logical functions and a lot of the formulas that we'll be using are on this formula bank right here. So let's look at what we have here. We have these products and it tells us their color as well as their brand. And on this table here, it tells us their price and what type of product they are. So whether they're shoes, shirts, or purses. So let's start with product. Going off of the brand, we can see that we have the brands listed on this table, and associated with each brand is a product and a price. So anything Jordan's is going to be shoes, anything Old Navy is going to be a shirt, and anything Coach is going to be a purse. So here we can do a VLOOKUP to find out this reference that we have, the product of this brand. Within this table, we can find out what type of item it is. So we know that anything Jordan's is a shoe, anything Old Navy is a shirt, and anything Coach is a purse. We can find the information we're looking for in the second column. So let's say 2, and we want an exact match, so we're going to say 0. And let's not forget to lock this table in place so that we can drag down and it doesn't move. And now we get that output for each and every product. Next, we have price. So we have equal sign, VLOOKUP. What you use for your reference here is really your choice. So we can use the brand again, comma. We can use this table. And then starting from the brand, which is our reference, we have the first, second, the price is in the third column. So we could type 3 and then 0 for exact match. Yes, we have numbers. However, we don't have ranges of numbers because for Jordans, any Jordans product is $100 exactly. So there's no range of numbers. So we're going to do 0 or exact match. And let's not forget to lock this table too. And we can drag it down. Now, you can also choose to use the other thing as your reference. So if you want to, you can use this as your reference because this is also in this table. You could say equal sign, VLOOKUP. You can choose cell C3, comma, as your reference. When you choose that as your reference, if it's here, you cannot start a table from here because your reference has to be at the very leftmost column of your VLOOKUP. So you start from there. And now the value you're trying to get, which is the price, is the second column. Still an exact match. So these are just different ways of doing it. You can do whichever way you're most comfortable with. So we have these 3 questions, and for each question, we have to answer in a different column. So basically, it's telling us Coach products are out of stock. How do we say that? To do this, we're going to use an if formula. So we got if, and the if formula has 3 parts to it. So we have a logical test or a condition, the value or what the cell tells us if the condition is true, and then the value of false, which is if that condition is not true, what is Excel going to tell us? So let's start with the condition. If it's a Coach product, we're going to say it's out of stock. So we can find Coach in this column right here. So we can say cell B3. We're going to set that equal to Coach in quotation marks. Always use quotation marks when talking about words. And then if this is the case, then you want to say it's out of stock. And if this is not true, if this value here is not Coach, which for this one it's not, we're going to say in stock. And then we can drag this down and it fills for each and every one. Now, it also says apply conditional formatting. Now we've done this twice in the past already, so I assume you guys are relatively comfortable with this, but while in the home tab, we're going to look to where it says conditional formatting, highlight cells rules, and out of these, we're not working with numbers, so it's not going to be greater than, less than, or any of that. It's going to be text that contains, the one with a letter. And we're going to say text that contains in stock. That's going to be green. But hold on, I didn't select the whole thing. I got to select the whole thing. Text that contains in stock is going to be green. Text that contains out of stock is going to be red. Now we have the question of, do we reorder? It says we want to reorder all out of stock products and all Jordans. How do we say that? Now we have the question of, do we reorder? Now here you have two options. You can do if or you can do ifs. I think if looks a little bit cleaner. So to do this, we're going to do an if function within an if function. So we're going to say, if this is an out of stock product, then we're going to reorder. And if it's not an out of stock product, we're going to check if it's a Jordan's product. And if it's neither of those, then we're not going to reorder. So to do this, we're going to say if here we click the cell next to us, in stock or out of stock, whatever one it is, it's going to be E3. We're going to say if this is equal to out of stock, honestly, we can say yes or no. And then if this is not the case, this is the value Excel is going to give back. So in the last one, we just gave it an alternative condition, but now we have multiple conditions. So even if it's not a Coach product, even if it's not out of stock, you got to check if it's a Jordan's product. So let's say this is not the case. What you want Excel to do next, in the event that it's not, is check if it's Jordan's. So here we're going to say if the brand is Jordan's, and we're also going to say yes. Otherwise, we're going to say no. And we use two closing parentheses for this. And here we can see that anything that says Jordan's, we're reordering. Anything that says out of stock, we're also reordering. Anything that's neither of those two things, it returns the value of no. Another way to do this, which is not as clean in this situation specifically, but I don't care if you can do it like this on the exam. We can do ifs in plural. And this is a lot more straightforward. So logical test 1 or condition 1, and then value of true. And then condition 2, and then value of that's true. So ifs, you click this equals to out of stock. And the value for that is going to be yes. And then we can keep going because ifs gives you the ability to put multiple conditions. So condition, value if it's true, the other condition, value if that's true. So the next condition is going to be B3 equals to Jordan's, and then the value of that's true, which is also going to be yes. Now, doing ifs is really complicated to put an alternative answer for if this is not the case. So if you drag this down, it's going to give you a bunch of NAs. I personally don't love this, but I'd rather use a nested if function for this personally, but that's just me. I don't care which one you use for the exam. So I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to do conditional formatting once again. For this text that contains yes, we're going to say green. Text that contains no, we're going to say red. Now, we have this next question, which says, expedite Coach reorder. Reorder Jordans in 3 days, and if we're not reordering yet, then we're going to reorder in 10 days. So to do this, it's the same exact logic. So if three is equal to Coach, we're going to say expedite. If that's not the case, we're going to check if B3 also again is equal to Jordan's. We're going to say 3 days. And if neither of these two things are the case, we know that we're not reordering from the previous question. So we can say that the otherwise statement, which is just part of the last part of the formula, is going to be 10 days for everything else. I think I need two closing parentheses here. But now we can drag this down, and that's about it for that part. Now we have all these questions here, right? So we have questions like how much, how many, and what is the total worth, total average. And we can answer these using these formulas right here. So let's take them one at a time. How much are all of the black items? So we're going to say equal sign. Out of all these formulas, you can take a look at them, and it's asking how much. So we're adding together all the prices in the condition that the items are colored black. So we're going to say sum if, and we have range, criteria, and sum range. So how do we know where to put the items and where to put the prices? Well, where it says sum range, you can kind of tell that those are the numbers we're going to add up. So where it actually says range in the first one, it's asking for the criteria range, or where can we find our condition? Where can we get that answer? Where can we find out the color of these items? So we're going to say A3 through A15. Criteria is going to be, in quotation marks, the color black. And then the sum range is going to be the numbers we add up, which is all the prices. How much are all of the black shoes? So if you look at this, it's a very similar question, but the difference is the color of the item has to be black and the item itself has to be a shoe. So now we have two conditions. When we have two conditions, we don't use sum if, we use sum ifs. So we're going to say equal sign sum ifs. And if you look at this now, you have sum range as the first thing that pops up. So usually if you have sum if or count if, the condition range is going to be the first thing that pops up, and you add everything together at the end. But we have sum ifs. It's kind of the opposite. The numbers you add up are going to be the first thing that you mention. And then the conditions are going to come after. Now, how do you remember which one is which? Well, honestly, me personally, I don't. I just look at what Excel tells me. So Excel guides you through these questions most of the time. So if it says sum range, these are the numbers you will be adding up. And you say comma, and then condition range one, and then condition one, condition range two, condition two, and so on. So we're going to say condition range one is going to be the color, comma, in quotation marks, we're going to say black. So as long as these cells contain the word black, we are going to count that while adding these prices. And also condition two is the product. So we select the products, comma, as long as the product contains shoes, we are going to add these numbers as well. So Excel is now going to look through all of these cells and see if the cell contains the word black and if the cell contains the word shoe. And if both of these things are true, it's going to put it into that calculation. And the result is 100. How many black items do we have? So it's not asking for any specifics. It just wants you to count how many black items are there total. And to do this is pretty easy. We're not going to use sum because we're not adding anything together. We're not going to use average. So by process of elimination, we're going to do count, right? So count if, and then the only condition is that the color is black. So we select the color and we give it the condition of the cell having the word black. And we get 3. And how many purple purses do we have? Now, again, this time it's 2 conditions. The color has to be purple and the item has to be a purse. So let's say equal sign, count ifs in plural, because it's 2 conditions. And this only has criteria range 1, criteria 1, criteria range 2, criteria 2, and so on. So let's say criteria range 1 is going to be the color. And we want this to say purple. Criteria range 2 is going to be the product. And we want this to say purse. 2 for this. What is the total worth of all of our items? Now, this is pretty straightforward. It's not on the formula bank, but I mean, you'd say equal sign, sum, add all the prices together, and that's that. What is the average of our black items? Now we're jumping into the next formula, right? So we have average if. The only condition is the items are black. So we say equal sign, average if. We have the range, criteria, and average range. So once again, because average range we know is the numbers we're going to add up, we're going to leave that for last. So we're going to start with the color of the items. So we're going to select all the colors, comma. The condition is that the color is black, and then the average range, which is the numbers we're going to take the average from, is going to be the prices. We get 166.67. This question is asking the average price of the white shoes. So we have the color and the product as conditions. Because there are multiple conditions, which is more than one, we're going to say average ifs. And we can see here that the first thing Excel asks for, because we're doing ifs again, is the average range. The average range is the numbers we're going to take the average out of. So again, when it's ifs, it's going to ask for the numbers you do the math with first. Just look at what pops up on the screen and you'll be able to know. And then condition range 1. Condition 1 is that the color is white. And then condition range 2, which is the product, we want that to be shoes. And we get 100. And what is the sum of all the red shirts? This is asking for the sum of their price. So we're going to say equal sign, sum ifs in plural because it's shirts and they're red. The first thing it asks for is sum range. So we're going to take all the numbers of the prices. Condition range 1 is going to be the color. Condition 1 is going to be red. Condition range 2 is going to be the product. Condition 2 is going to be shirt. Make sure you type shirt and not shirts because I did that mistake and it took me like 5 minutes to figure out. But that's about it for this part. And this is like the closest that this workshop will get to the exam. I recommend doing extra practice with this part because this first part is going to be crucial. That being said, the second part, if you're able to do this, you can do the first part with your eyes closed. Now, we have this salon and the services they do and some of their stylists, and it's asking how many times total for the first one. So how many times total was the shaving service done? So we're going to say equal sign. How many times total? We know that that's a count question. And there's only one condition, right? So count if, and we're getting our data from the services. So this is going to be our criteria range. And we're going to do Control Shift, or if you're on Mac, Command Shift, down arrow. Put a comma. And once we put our comma, we can do Control or Command and then up arrow. And we're all the way back up. Now see, here we normally would say shaving, right? This would be our condition. But the problem is when we drag this, it's also looking for the word shaving in these. And we know that this service is dying. So instead of doing this, instead of saying a specific word, what we can do is we can put the condition or the criteria to be whatever is in this cell, which in this case, it is the word shaving. And the reason we can do this is because when we do it like that, we can drag this down. And for each cell that we drag down, it moves down a cell. So what we're telling Excel is look through all this information in this column and try to find whatever it says on here. And as we drag it down, next is going to look for whatever it finds on here and so on. That's the first hurdle. The second hurdle, if you look at these and double check them, you're going to see that the selection moves down because we're dragging the cells down. So for this question, whenever you're selecting your data, make sure that you lock the rows. You can lock the columns too if you want to, but the rows are essential. Once that's done, it's easy from there. Next, we are looking for the total price of this service. So we're going to say equal sign. And we're going to say sum if. We have range, criteria, and sum range. So sum range is going to be the prices, right? So the range of the criteria, again, is going to be the service. Control Shift down, comma, Control up, and we're back here. Set it equal to this cell. So we're in these cells, we're scanning for whatever it says here, which is shaving. And in the sum range, we click on the price, Control Shift down. Close the parenthesis. Make sure that we lock everything here. As far as the table goes, we don't want to lock the A2. Because the A2 will, as we drag this. Now it's asking how many times did people pay by cash? So let's say equal sign. It's asking for how many times. So it's going to be a count question. And the condition is by cash. But also there's the condition that the service done was shaving. So we're going to do count ifs in plural. And we click on the range of the first condition. Control Shift down again, comma, Control up, and we set that equal to shaving. And then the range for the second condition is going to be the payment method. We click on cash, Control Shift down, comma, and we don't have a cell that reads specifically cash. So this time we're just going to specify cash. And we don't have to drag that either way. So make sure we log this. You can drag down. And if we double check, everything looks good. Now, how many times by credit card? So it's the same exact question as the last one, except it's asking for the different thing. You guys could type it again, or you could just copy what you have here, paste it, and change cash to credit card. And it's going to give you the same logic, but credit card is the answer. Now, total price by cash. So what's going on here? Total price, that means we're adding things together. It's going to be a sum. And by cash, that is a condition. And we have the different services here, which are the other condition. So this is going to be a sum, and it's going to be an ifs. So the sum range is the first thing it's asking for. We select all the prices, comma, go back up. For the criteria range 1, we can choose either one. So I'm going to do the service. Go back up, and then we're going to set that equal to this, cell A2. And then criteria range 2 is going to be the payment method. Control Shift down, comma. And we're going to set that equal to the word cash. Make sure we log the table. Something went wrong here, so let me check. I have like a little typo. Yeah. Nope, that's not it. Oh, something is wrong here. So guys, sometimes things like this will happen. When it does, don't panic. So we have the payment method. I selected the wrong cell. So just click on it again, Control Shift down. And then we're going to lock it. I believe while locking it, I clicked something wrong and it just changed what was on there. But we're back. So we double click on this and we get the values. Next, we are looking at these stylists, right? So the work that these stylists did. And we can see here that we have a bunch of stylists like Jane, Martha, Lucy, Alex, Rachel. But the only ones we want data for are Jane, Martha, and Alex. So it's asking how many times total did Jane perform a service. So the only thing it's asking for is the name, right? So we're going to say equal sign. How many times? We're going to do count if stylist name. And we're going to set that equal to the cell A9 because that's what reads Jane. And we're also going to be able to drag that down. Total price. Now this time we want to add up the numbers and also make sure that the stylist is Jane. So we're going to do sum if. It's still one condition. We're just trying to get the price. So make sure you understand the logic of what's happening. Just because it's asked for two things doesn't mean it's two conditions, you know. So range, that's going to be the range where our condition is. We are going to select stylist name. Control up. We're going to say Jane or cell A9. And then the numbers we're adding up are going to be all the cells related to the price. I'll log the table. And that's what we get. Now we're being asked how many times this stylist did shaving. So we're going to say equal sign. How many times we're going to count. The two criteria are that they did shaving and the stylist name, right? So we're going to count ifs. Criteria range 1 is going to be the stylist name. Criteria 1 is going to be that the stylist name is equal to Jane, or the cell that contains Jane. And then criteria range number 2 is going to be service, and that has to be equal to shaving. We don't have to set it equal to anything this time because we're not dragging that part. Make sure that we log the cell. So now it's asking how many times were their clients kids. So we're going to say equal sign, pound, ifs, because it's 2 criteria, the service, which is kid services, and then the stylist, which is the stylist name. So we're going to say criteria 1 is going to be that the stylist name is Jane, and then criteria 2 is that the service is the kids bundle. So we're going to say kids. Now, this next question, guys, is going to be very evil, and it's not going to be on the test. I just have it on here because I think it would be funny to torture you all. So we're going to say sum of price for shaving between 5/10/2020 and 5/20/2020. So we're going to say equal sign, sum ifs, because it's multiple conditions. The sum range is going to be price. Let's take them one at a time, right? So the stylist has to be Jane. So the first criteria is that the stylist name, we're going to set that equal to cell A9. The next criteria is that service is shaving. So we're going to click on the cell that says shaving, comma, and then we're going to set. So we're going to click on the column that has the services, and from the services, we want the one that says shaving. Now, the way to do the dates is we're going to select the column with the dates, and in quotation marks, we're going to say greater than, which means it's or equal to, which means it's on this date or after, 5/10/2020. And to say that it's before the 20th, we're going to select those same cells, and we're going to say that they're less than or equal to 5/20/2020. That autofills for the rest of them. Now, yes, it has to be within the quotation marks. That's just how Excel reads it. Also, the whole point of this is to show you how complicated it can get. This is not going to be on the test. All right, Chess. So this is the last part, completely optional. This stuff is also not going to be on the exam, but it might help you in the workplace. So, and or conditions. The way these apply, we're going to say equal sign, if, and basically we have these 3 conditions, right? Only Ariana's projects are in scope. Lead time has to be at least 20 days. Savings have to be at least 500,000. So the first question is saying all of these criteria have to be true for this project to be considered in scope. So to do this, we're going to say if, and within the if formula, we're going to say and we're going to say P4 equals to Ariana Sterling. C4 is greater than or equal to 20, and then B4 is greater than or equal to 500,000. Essentially, what this is telling us is the whole first part of this formula, which is the condition, all 3 of these things have to be true for the condition to be considered true. So instead of 1 condition, we have 3 that have to be true at the same time. And then in the event that this is accurate, we're going to say that project is in scope. And in the event that it's not accurate, we're going to say that it's out of scope. Close this. And we find out that for this project, only one of them is in scope. So what the AND formula does in this case is instead of 1 condition, you apply 3 at the same time. The OR function works the exact same way. So we're going to say equal sign if, except now we want only one of these three conditions to be true. So it could be the first one, it could be the third one, it could be two of them, it could be all of them, but only one of them has to be true for the project to be considered in scope. So to do this, we're going to say or, and we're going to put the condition. So B4 is equal to Ariana Sterling. C4 is greater than or equal to 20. And then B4 greater than or equal to 500,000. Oh yeah, I forgot the rest of the formula. So this is the first part. And then in quotation marks, if any of these conditions are true, because we're using or, Excel is going to tell us that the project is in scope. But if not even one of these conditions is true, we're going to say that the project is out of scope. And now we can see which projects are in scope and which ones are not. For the exam, I would highly, highly, highly focus on this section, the first part. This will make it super easy for you to do the first part with your eyes closed. And the third part is going to be bonus information that you could apply to your school projects, workplace, etc. But that's pretty much it for now. Good luck studying for the exam, and I will see you Wednesday for the review.